Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, where we keep you updated with all that is happening. We're seeing that the inflation rate for March has actually increased from 32 to 33.2%. And for food, we are seeing that, the prices of food have skyrocketed. Right now, we are looking at month-on-month of 40% increment. So that is our inflation rate for food. Well, for those who are living in the 10 most expensive states in the country, I think it's high time you look into what you can do to be able to live above what and be able to afford food prices, especially where we're seeing that the electricity hike tariff has actually been the reason why we're seeing even the increase in food prices and other items in the market. I am Sela Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sarah.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, do remember you can join us live on Facebook and YouTube. Drop your comment, your view on any of the issue we will be looking at this morning from the paper. And we shall go through the first paper, which Rachel will take us through.
On Nigerian Tribune, APC, controversy in Kano over Ganduje's suspension. Ward ESCO State Chapter in counter move as ward leaders disown suspension. Details can be found on page 15. Inflation rate hits 33.20% despite Naira rebound. UI professor to receive £900,000 British Academy's Global Award. Fuel subsidy is back, El Rufai says. You can find details on page 5. Nigeria grows oil reserves to 37.50 billion barrels. Unilorin professor produces biodiesel from eggshells. You can find details on page 17. Tinubu not serious with Chibok girls rescue. This is a statement from Clark. You can find why he is saying the president is not serious about the rescue of Chibok girls on page 2. Oromoni died of natural causes. This is a report from the coroner. You can find details on page 3. Oyo government receives Olakulehin's nomination as 43rd Olubadan. Details can be found on page 2. Still on the papers, Oyo Secretariat invasion, police parade 21 suspects as army vows to prevent recurrence. The writer under the story says, Yoruba Nation agitators cells busted. Makinde security advisor. This is a statement coming from Makinde security advisor. It says security beefed up at Secretariat. Omotekun warns over unholy gathering in Oshun. We insist on Yoruba Nation. This is coming from the agitators. Details can be found on page 2. How government rescued over 1,000 abductees without ransom. A report coming from NSA, and we are looking forward to seeing more of this success. You can find details on page 3, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Daily Sun newspaper, Methodist Church faults Nigerian security architecture once it overhauled. You can find detail on page 26. And we have a fresh twist in Kano politics as APC ward sack Ganduji, talking about his ward in Kano State. Side grab allegation impending arrangement. And then we have state party, local government void the action, suspend masterminds. Our officials impersonating claim ward leadership. You can find more detail of this twist in the APC concerning the chairmanship. 10 years after Chibok abduction, UNICEF rate anti-attack warning system low. Calls for action to rescue children's education in Nigeria, which we've seen that down from our paper yesterday. And the NDA arrests 50,901 drug offenders in 3 years. Rescues conviction of 9,034 coming from Malwa. You can find detail of that on page 5. Matawali turns NEF ex-spokesmanship, tells him to leave the APC government if he can't promote it. How we rescue over 1,000 adoptees without ransom coming from the NSA. Governor Sule expresses worry over spike in kidnapping. More detail can be found on page 5. And on Plateau killing, Bokos resident raised the alarm over shooting of civilians by soldiers. And the military here saying it's not true. We hope investigation will go into that. We do not want to have case that is presently going in Delta State concerning reprisal attack, and the army are saying they have nothing to do with that. And here we're seeing While the residents of workers are saying they are being shot by soldiers, the military is saying it's not true. So we hope there will be a thorough investigation concerning that so we can get the truth and people's life will be safe. Food prices continue to rise as inflation hit 33.20%. You can find detail of that report coming from the NBC on page 2. Coming from the former governor of Kaduna State, Erufai, he said federal government now paying more subsidies, urged Tinubu to sack non-performing appointees. You can find detail on page 7. Federal government sue over plight of Nigerians in Ethiopian prisons. More detail on page 28. Downside of the paper, hoodlums hijack truckload of palliative in Benue. More detail can be found on page 4. And we have a picture story where we can see suspended members of the Yoruba Nation agitators being paraded by the Oyo State Police Command in Ibadan yesterday, and that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On New Telegraph report, e-payment recorded all-time high 88.04 trillion naira in March, as check usage drops by 13.74% to 262.35 billion naira. You can start with the details on the front page. Nigeria's oil reserve hit 37.5 billion barrels, and then we have gas 209.26 billion. This is a report from NUPRC. Matawali to northern appointees stand with Tinubu or quit. Lagos opens 3-month window for house owners to regularize permits. NDLEA has arrested 50,901 convicted and have convicted 9,034. This is a report from the NDLEA boss Marwa. And then we have parent doctor's negligence killed Sylvester Oromoni. This is coming from a coroner report. You can find details on page 6. The big story on the paper, Ganduje's purported suspension. We were impersonated. 27 ward chair says as Kanu APC counters and sack them all. One, they will take legal action against imposters. NNPP saying Ganduje's suspension welcomed if. Details can be found on page 2 and 7. Skyrocketing food prices push inflation to 33.2%, a report from the Bureau of Statistics. Oyo Secretariat invasion police parade 21 arrested Yoruba Nation agitators. Statement from El-Rufai, federal government paying more money on petrol subsidy than before. Shetima Yako Gedam thwarted Chibok girls rescue. This is Clark alleging that that's what happened at the background. You can find details on page 3 and 5. Nigeria plunged into darkness as national grid collapses again. And here we go again, starting the year with big grid collapse, such as the one that took place yesterday. You can find details on page 2 and 4. At the downside of the paper, we have a study that says regular paracetamol use, even low doses, can damage heart. Yes, it's not all the time you feel a headache, you take paracetamol. Sometimes just sleep, just lie down, take water or something. But yes, that is drug abuse. Even if the dosage are low, it can condemn your heart. So just do whatever it takes to manage pain rather than just popping pills into your mouth. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, where we have household groan over food prices as inflation differs intervention. You can find detail of that on page 6, and it seems to be the kind of the headline on most of the paper this morning, looking at our new inflation, about 33.2%. And then, you know, when I was looking at the top, according to Naira Merits, where they're giving a report about the 10 most expensive states in Nigeria, and I was surprised. I mean, I was hoping states such as Lagos will be on the list, Abuja, and then I was seeing states such as, you know, even Kogi State, Bauchi State, and then this is because of the availability of food prices, because from some of the story this morning, we can see that the reason why we're seeing inflation is because despite the fact that our Naira is kind of gaining some relevance or actually against the dollar, but then yet we're seeing that there's still issue when it comes to food. And here we're saying that people are even taking it, where we're seeing in Benue State, hoodlums have
Yeah.
actually hijacked truck of palliative coming to the state. So I do not know what our governors are doing, because regardless of what we say right now, Richard, to the layman, all he or she is concerned about is the fact that I just want to have the money to be able to afford food. Because
Exactly.
I think you and I have said the fact that it's not like there's no food. When you go to the market, there are grains. But the issue here is that how much are you talking about? How much is a measure of maize? How much is a measure of rice? We know this is the basic or most of the commodities we consume. And then let's not even talk about tuber of yam. We remember when bakers even went on break because of how high it is, the cost of baking and all of that. So something needs to be done. And we are seeing that, according to report, Rachel, inflation is not going down. Rather, we're going to be seeing an increase. It might be slow, but the inflation will keep going high and high. And then with the recent tariff talking about a high of electricity, we're saying there's going to even be more this month. For April, it's going to be more, because we know just recently we saw the removal of the electricity subsidy. So I really do not know what our government are doing, because some of these policies look more like they're trying to push the common man to the extreme.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping that I'll see something, a proactive measure coming. I know what you and I are talking about when Labour is saying May 1st. I mean, we know, yes, of course, workers, they look more like Christmas to them. But then when you do not have food to eat, of what essence is that day? So I'm hoping that at the various levels, starting from the federal government down to even the local government area, let us see some proactive measures coming from our governors. Just give out something that can actually help people, because the more people are being pushed, I'm not trying to say I'm giving room for wrongdoing, but we'll see more crime coming up, because people need to survive. We see where people's shops are being buckled into and all of that, because people just need to survive. So we look forward to seeing what the government will do concerning all of these issues that we're seeing, especially when it comes to the prices of food commodities in the market.
I want to believe that by now, selling layman, a common man, everybody, you and I, should understand or know the workings of the economy a little bit, just on the surface, not the deep level kind of thing, but especially when it comes to inflation. Because sometimes you ask yourself, was the beans imported? You ask yourself, was the millet imported? Was the hungry rice imported? Was the tomato imported? Was the chili pepper imported? We ask ourselves this kind of question, and then we need to understand that we have so many factors playing when it comes to inflation. And we can cast our mind back to when the dollar was 300 to a naira, for example. Did we have inflation? Yes. We had food inflation. It was there. There was food inflation. There was housing inflation. There was the headline inflation, keep going high and high and high. Because, yes, our exchange rate is a factor there. But you see, there is percentage appropriated to every factor. Even if the dollar is going low, we made mention of that yesterday. I said that it's not down to 300. It's not down to 400. It's not down to 500. It's still very high compared to what we had even at the first quarter of 2023. Is double what we had as at 2023, and we can go back to just 2022, 2021. Even if it goes below 1,000 to a dollar, it's still very high. Regardless of what it is, it's still very high. And then let's not forget that we are still importing raw materials to finish the products that we have in this country. And now secondly, we are seeing, we might say it is too soon to see the effect of tariff hike on the prices of goods or commodity in the market, but it's not, because it has been lingering. There have been that increase, but I think this one is more, it's felt because it's bigger and sudden and all of that, and we can keep going. So when we see, we can't just say, well, the dollar have gone down, then it means we shouldn't struggle with inflation. No, we are still looking at the fuel pump price for petrol at over 700. We are looking at diesel over 1,500. And this is what manufacturers use. This is what the trucks that bring those goods from the villages from the rural areas down to the urban areas use. And as long as those things are still where they are and no headway moving, even if the dollar comes down, it's not a guarantee because it has its own percentage role to play. That is why we might see that the imported goods, for example, might start going down, but our farmers are accessing fertilizers easily. What is the charge? What are the charges of transporting these goods to the market, and has it changed? These are all the factors we are to look around and say, okay, what is the challenge of farmers? What is it that they are going through? They are paying ransom to access their farms and all of that. These are all the things that are going down or going on the ground and even on the surface and all of that. So yes, in as much as we would love to see that the dollar is impacting and the prices of goods in the market, it won't be as significant as we expect it to be because it is just another factor among many other factors. And until the others are dealt with, then we will still find ourselves where we are, and there might not be any significant decrease concerning the cost of living in the country as it is.
Focusing so much on the exchange rate, I think we should start focusing on what we can do. I mean, we've been talking about the fact that we need to start consuming what we produce, looking at some of the factors that are affecting, just like you mentioned. I mean, our farmers have to pay ransom, diesel. So no wonder it's when you're living in Bauchi and then in Kogi State, of course, you know what it means to take maybe grains from one part of the country to another. So the distance is actually the reason why we're seeing all of that. So let's just see what we can do as a country to, make things better for everyone. Now, still on the Guardian newspaper, we have leveraging automation for prompt justice delivery system. This is a new analysis you can find on page 4. Southwest leaders fault Oyo invasion as police parade 21 suspects. Baker begs life jail for defiling neighbor's daughter. You can find that on page 8. Federal government target $15.7 trillion artificial intelligence market. More detail on page 5. What suspend Ganduji over alleged graft and state chapter kicks. Support Tinubu or quit, Matawali tells the federal appointees from the north. National grid suffers third collapse worse in 20 hours power stage, even though the power is back, but then we're still seeing some parts of the country are still going through darkness presently. Court attributes Sylvester Orimuni's death to parents and doctor negligence, and we know that this is a case that has been going for over a year right now concerning the death of the student, and here we're seeing it's all about negligence. So you can find more detail on page 7. The BCDC orders soldiers to leave Bokos as death toll hits 30. More detail can be found on page 30 of the Guardian newspaper, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Daily Independent, Kano APC cracks down on ward officials for suspending Ganduje. NNPP hails suspension, says it's welcome development. Why some politicians are after Yahya Bello. Investigation confirmed he is not into hiding. The big story, defend Tinubu or quit, Matawali tells northern appointees. NSA receives 22 rescued Zamfara varsity students and staff. NDLEA arrests 50,901 suspects, secures 9,034 convictions in 38 months. Details can be found on page 29. Inflation rate increases to 33.2% in March. Oromoni died of negligence from parents and doctor, coming from the Lagos coroner. You can find details on page 7. Invasion of Oyo government secretariat. Yoruba nation agitators name sponsors justify action. Police parade teacher, 1 female, 19 other suspects, recover guns, flags, cutlasses, and others. TCN restores collapse grid, blames incident on fire. This is one among the many times TCN is blaming these incidents on fire. But we are looking forward to when our grids will be fireproof, or the necessary maintenance that will stop it being so easily prone to fire incidents to be taken and put in place. You can find details on page 6, and that's all news on Daily Independent.
On First News newspaper, how federal government rescued over 1,000 abducted persons without ransom, coming from the NSA Ribado. More detail found in the paper. Defense Tinubu quit government, Matawale tells the northern appointees. Gandoji survives Kano APC world coup as state party ESCO notifies the action swap on the mastermind and sanction them. Gandoji's word ESCO debunk ex-governor suspension, blames the NNPP as group alleges Kwankwaso boys behind the APC chairman suspension. No regret invading Oyo government house, arrested Yoruba nation agitators, declares the police parade 21 suspects, which we can see them in the picture story on the front page of the paper. Fulani group to Tinubu, Wike causing havoc, sack him now, threatened to withdraw 33,360 strong support for president if the FCT president is not stopped. I take that story again. Wike causing havoc, sack him now, threatened to withdraw 33,360 strong support for the president if the FCT minister is not stopped. You can find detail of what the Fulani group are saying to the president. Many Nigerians unaware Tinubu now paying more for fuel subsidy. This is coming from Erifai. Says, I don't want to be anyone's godfather, coming from the former governor of Kaduna State. Parents and doctors' negligence kills Sylvester Urimuni Corona. And then here we see Falana falls the judgment, says Corona ignore the evidence. You can find more detail. We know there have been a back and forth whether he was being bullied in school or he actually took some substance or what really was the cause of his death. And we know autopsy was being done back and forth and all of that. So here we see Falana is faulting the judgment while we're having a report here saying that it was out of negligence from the parents and doctors. Abuja mega church bows to public pressure, apologizes to woman accused of false testimony. We will remember during the weekend there was an issue like that, but we see that she has been apologized. Number of people are coming out, philanthropists are even coming to give her hotel to rest and all of that. So you can find more detail of that story in the paper. Blackout hit Nigeria as power grid collapses again. TCN blames fire outbreak. More detail found in the paper. US-based Nigerian bodybuilder dies 18 days after being shot by wife. More detail can be found in the paper, and that's all on First News newspaper.
Now on the Nation newspaper, the big story, Ibadan attack. Police launch manhunt for Abiola's widow. Other bakers of violent agitators on security radar. Suspects to be charged with treason and terrorism. You can start with the details on the front page. APC suspends Ganduje's ward ESCO for 6 months. How to stem inflation by experts, and rate rises to 33.20%. Tinubu writes on Chibok girls, says kidnapping must end. Coroner blames Oronomi's dead on parental neglect. Trump's criminal trial begins in New York. Details can be found on page 30. And then Israel-Iran war looms. More details also on page 30. Crude oil reserves hit 37.50 billion barrels. Another power grid collapse paralyzes businesses and other activities. 30 held for illegal mining. NDLEA arrested 50,901 drug suspects in 3 years. Details can be found on page 4, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, power allocation to this coast rose to 3,155 megawatts, coming from the TCN. Nigeria's inflation hit 33.20%. The big story coming from the president, Nigeria's economy will be liberated. Says no more payment of ransom to kidnappers. As economic policy beginning to yield positive results, we must root out the scourge of kidnapping. More detail of all of this being said by the president can be found on page 2. Pastor Eneche apologizes, insists he had no intention to embarrass the church member. Detail found on page 2. Lagos police confirm arrest of soldier for allegedly stabbing motorcyclist. More detail found on page 22. We have the pictures where we can see the president alongside the governor of Lagos State. We will remember we saw that yesterday. You can find more detail of any of the story inside the paper.
On the Punch newspaper, State Police law amendment may take 2 years. Naira nears $1,000 to a dollar at parallel market. Dangote modular refineries to pay Naira for crude. You can find details on page 35, and that, I believe, is a starting point concerning the Naira having some value when it comes to trade. Nigeria's FDI fell by $19 billion in 10 years. This is coming from Finance Minister Edun. You can find details on page 30. The big story, vandalism worsens grid collapse as gas shortage slashes power supply. TCN discuss blame gas shortage, vandalism for frequent collapses, firms beg customers. TCN plans fresh investment in power infrastructure as grid collapse 6th time in 2024. Lecturer defense participation, police parade 21. This is concerning the Yoruba nation agitation. Testimony backlash, Dunamis apologizes as Abuja testifier meets Enenche and wife. Father kicks as coroner blames parents, doctor for teenagers dead. You can find details on page 5. I mean, if you are not going to trust the report from an expert, why go ahead with it? It's supposed to give you ideas, but I believe because now the finger is pointing back at them, they don't want to agree. They were hoping for it to be something else. And then I mean, this is a wake-up call to everybody when we should also, you know, want to take responsibility for certain things and what it happens. And when you involve an expert in a situation, when the result comes out, you should take it and then do better, because you are not perfect. And of course, even if it was your negligence, it wasn't intentional. And then perhaps they were hoping it would be someone else's fault so that it could be a legal battle back and forth and all of that. But in the end, a life has been lost, and then it's just a wake-up call in the end whatsoever to be aware and just, you know, more up and doing concerning certain things. You can find details on page 15, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Richard, before we move forward, I also want to just add my thoughts to that story, because it says some of our papers felt it's important to take this story.
Yeah.
And I think it's to take to bring home the lesson to a lot of parents. Just like you said, they were hoping a different result, and we knew that when it was fresh, the case was fresh, it was a battle between the school and the parents. And just like you said, I think the parents actually have you know, our parents are fond of actually, you know, just abandoning their kids. I mean, a child is 13, 14, and then you dump him in the boarding school, and then when the child is back home, you don't get time to get to talk to your child. You see certain changes in the child's behavior, and you don't care to ask questions. You feel that money can do every other thing, and here we're seeing. So right now, you don't know whether to blame seniors for bullying him, or will you blame the school for seeing some of these signs and not doing something, or you want to blame the doctors for not doing all they needed to do to make sure that this boy will be revived back and all of that. Because I remember the story that said he dad took some substance, was it fuel or something, and then the story was just kind of complicated and all of that. So just like we said, as a parent, play your role well. Be very, very attentive to your child, especially teenagers. They tend to keep things to themselves. If you don't get to, especially if you don't have a child that is outspoken and all of that, you need to get the information out of the child in one way or the other. So you should know your child better. I mean, you don't just dump the child in the school and then you believe, because the child spends more time in school, whether you like it or not. But the little time you have, you need to talk more. So we hope that with stories, because Sylvester is not the only person. We've had cases. I remember last year we saw that of the, as it was it Chrisland,
something like that.
We saw something like that happening there as well. And then they said the girl just died, or was it a heart attack during running?
So the parents said no. They said it's an accident in the school. It could be electrocution and all of that, and then the back and forth.
You see all of this back and forth. These are things that, I mean, as a parent, you should be able. I mean, that's why we have schools that take it medical checkup very seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you go back, you check your child to be sure if there's anything. And then I saw, I mean, I think yesterday also we saw another protest in University of Jos. I was trying to make it relevant here, where we saw that the sickler died because the certain things that were needed were not being provided in the school, and then before she could be transported or being moved to a very good hospital, she died on arrival and all of that. So these are some of the things, even as a school, what can you do? Provide some of these basic amenities that are needed so that if the ward is dead, a parent can be, you know, his or her mind can be addressed, knowing the fact that, you know what, my child is being taken care of there. So I just hope that when we see reports like this coming up on our paper, it's not just for us to read and pass, but for us to actually take home the lesson. What can I do as a guardian, as a sponsor, whatever you can do to make sure that we don't have repetition of the stories coming up again on our paper. Well, before we move further with other paper analysis, we would love to take a break at this moment so you can chew the story, drop your comment concerning the inflation rate presently, the issue in Kanu concerning the suspension or alleged suspension of the APC chairman Ganduji, and then other stories that are actually on the front page of the paper and more. Please stay tuned with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper. Our inflation is about 33.20%, especially in regards to the issue of our food prices, which is what actually affected that. And then we also saw other stories on the paper regarding what the president is going to do about the abduction of students, the initiative he's bringing in to make sure that students are safe in school, and other stories as well that we've seen are very important on the paper. So we'd love you to follow us along, drop your view, drop your comment on any of the story that is of interest to you. I still have Rachel Tanzo with me. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Daily Times newspaper. On the Daily Times newspaper, we have Nigeria will lead Africa in developing, regulating AI globally, coming from the federal government. More detail can be found on the front page of the paper and inside the paper. RFI is still insisting that the federal government is now paying more money on petrol subsidy than before. Asked the president to drop appointees who failed to deliver. We know this is also coming from Matawari. More detail found on page 2. How federal government rescue over 1,000 adoptees without ransom, says the successful rescue operations were testimonies to efforts of government to free all held in captivity. More detail found in the paper. Judge threatens to strike out trial of alleged 4 terrorists who kidnapped and killed Imo monarch. Also, still, we're having the issue of Nigerians' inflation soared to 33.2% in March. More detail found on page 14. We have a picture story here where we can see debris of burnt building at the Yola main market in Adamawa State. Yesterday on Monday, we're seeing that there was a fire that actually got down property. So you can get the paper and read more detail of what happened there and other stories of interest to you in the paper.
On this day newspaper, NUPRC announces addition of 1.087 billion barrels to Nigeria's crude oil reserves, 2.573 TCF to gas stock, and the writer saying oil reserves to last 68.01 years, gas 97.99 years. Nigeria now holds 33% of Africa's total gas deposits. Commission sets new guideline for domestic crude obligations to local refineries. Details can be found on page 18. See back page for President Tinubu's article in Newsweek. In Cherry News, NSA announces release of remaining 22 Gusau University students, says mass abduction of Nigerians never again. 10 years after Chibok, UNICEF seeks action to secure children's education. The big story on the paper, Naira appreciates to 7-month high, 1,000 Naira to $1 at parallel market. Inflation rose 33.20% in March. Rising food, commodities, energy prices responsible for surge in CPI. Food index hits 40.01%, severe in Kogi, Bauchi, Kwara, and others. Israel response to Iran's retaliatory attack may be imminent, country's official states. Details can be found on page 10. We have a picture story that says strategic meeting between NGX Group and Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. That's all the news on this day newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, e-payment transaction rise to 89% to 257.7 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2024. While electricity power system collapsed the 4th time in 2024, while we're having other papers that saying the 6th time in 2024. So it seems that for every month we've had a grid collapse of maybe twice a month or so. So you can look more into that story on page 26. And the issue of the Okwama attack, where we're having army lacks the power to deny journalists access. Remember, these are part of the reason where we saw a number of people were talking about why journalists were being denied access into what is happening there. And here we're seeing that the governor is saying that the army lacks the power to do that. You can find more detail inside the paper. Federal government still subsidizing petrol in trillions of naira, ex-governor El-Rufai is saying. Big story on the paper, more pressures on pockets as food inflation rises to 40%. High electricity tariff to drive further rise. This is coming from analysts. It's bad for businesses, coming from the NACCIMA. Small businesses to lose capital base. This is coming from Ashburn. More detail of that can be found on page 20. Here we still have the picture story showing us police parade invaders of Oyo State Secretariat, and then some of the things that were being recovered from them. And the issue of Chibok girls, we have 1,680 more Nigerian school children abducted in 10 years, a report coming from UNICEF. And on the Oyo invasion, Yoruba nation sponsors promise to end my hunger, coming from a female suspect. We don't regret our actions. This is coming from some of the suspects. Local security outfit discovers hideout. Makinde hails the security agency for peace in Oyo. Invasion is treasonable, coming from Oyo government. Treat the invaders as complices. This is coming from the YCE telling the federal government. It's an act of treason, Bode George. And then here we're having as the MKO son blast Onitiri Abiola for invasion. More detail of this can be found on page 10. Nigeria grows oil reserve to 37.5 million barrels. And on illegal traffic enforcement, miscreants take over Lagos Road. More detail found on page 8. Western nation urge restraint as Israel wall cabinet meets second time in less than 24 hours. That's on the international scene. You can look at that story more on page 15, and that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, Tinubu paying more for fuel subsidy, a statement from El Rufai. Oromoni died of natural causes and parental negligence. Inflation defies stronger naira, hits 33.2% on higher commodity prices. We have trending U.S. to support Nigeria's war against terrorism, and numbers customs raises 66.9 billion naira at port and terminal in the first quarter of this year. You can find details on page 2. Defend Tinubu or quit office, Matawali tells northern appointees. The big story, plot to remove Ganduje, Damagum Tickens. Details can be found on page 4. The writer saying North Central intensifies lobby for chairman position in APC PDP. Drama in Kano over Ganduje's suspension. Wike camp splits ahead of PDP neck. State chairman vowed to resist any move outside party constitution. How we rescue 22 Zamfara varsity students and staff, report from NSA. Yoruba nation agitation, act of terrorism, says Oyo government. Israel weighs option to retaliate after Iran's attack. Sentiments reforms push naira value to 1,136 to a dollar. Details can be found on page 23. We have picture story where we can see Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, together with Femi Bajabiamila and others welcoming the president. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the sports, where we have Owabi equals Owaku Kanu EPL assist record. Also, we have Boniface, better striker than Helen Newts behind Harry Kane, Udave and Mbappe. Also, we have Chukwueze disallow goals in night offside battle in Italy. We also have Rice refuses to give up Arsenal title and hopes Man City ready to pay £120 million for Misali. And then also we have expect another PSG trader says Barca coach. So you can find any other story, quite a number of stories for sport lovers on the front page of the paper. So you can do well to grab the Sporting Sun and read more detail of any of the sports story that is of interest to you.
On Business Day, the big story, stronger naira fails to put food on tables. Power sector troubled as grid collapses 9 times under Tinubu. Economic analysis, a call for productivity reform. You can turn to page 10 and 23 of Business Day newspaper to find the details, and that's all the news on Business Day newspaper.
Richard, before we move further, I mean, this power, I think there was a story we saw earlier about vandalism on one of our papers, and then where we saw TCN saying either it was fire or gas and all of that, and then we're seeing businesses that are being affected eventually. Now, the question or the concern here will be, what is the TCN together with the power sector or the power minister doing concerning this? Because it's now becoming like a norm or a normal thing for them, the fact that power, we keep having businesses. Just imagine, Rachel, from 3 a.m. yesterday that we had that grid collapse. So whenever they fix the light, because I mean, I got somewhere in the night around, I don't know, I just woke up around 3 a.m. and then there was light. So I really did not know the precise time that light came back. But I'm imagining businesses that had to be shut down because some people cannot afford diesel. We made mention of how much it is. So imagine a baker that was unable to meet up with the deadline for maybe a birthday cake or a wedding cake whatsoever. Or just imagine a small business that was just trying to strive and then something happened. So what can be done? Because it's becoming, I just do not know. Yes, yesterday we saw in the paper where they said 3 years imprisonment if you are being caught either vandalizing or doing anything or stealing any of these cables and all of that. And we've seen that even with our railway, where certain tracks are being taken away by some people or all of that. What can the government do concerning this? Because we made mention of some of our multinationals that had to leave the country. And whether we like it or not, power was one of the reasons that actually chased them away, because they could no longer survive with the environment, some of the factors that are pushing them away and all of that. What can the government do? Because I remember there was a time that we had some some of our plants idle. And now we're
Exactly.
seeing that we're having a megawatts dropping. Yesterday it went down at 60 something or 30 something megawatts. So of course we wouldn't be able to power all of that. What can they do so that we can just rectify this? Because I just hope that for every time we bring maybe recommendations, we'll see this being put to use. We'll see our power minister doing something about it. I mean, there was a time where we had flimsy excuse in the past where our power minister would say it's because we didn't have water in our dams. And I just wouldn't hear but say this excuse, I mean, shouldn't even stand. Why would you give such a flimsy excuse for a reason why we cannot have power? People that are paying for it, let's not even talking about whether it's band A, B, C. We are in band A, yet we are enjoying like you're in band D or even band Z. So something needs to be done concerning the issue of power in the country.
I believe it's more of probe and then recover. Because when you look at, I just want to see and say, okay, look at what is happening in the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. When you're able to probe and recover certain amounts of money, then you can be able to find a way forward. Why I am saying so is that there's a lot of probing too. What has the funds that have been put into electricity power in the country have been done? Because we are obviously not seeing anything over the period of years. We saw where we had it on the papers some months back, I think the beginning of this year, where there is a probe on the Mambila power plant.
Yes.
Because, Sele, if we have enough effective, sufficient, up to standard plants functioning, we wouldn't be having this much grid collapse. Number 9 ever since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu stepped in, and for this year we are having a little above 4. So it means that is a lot. So like every month, so there's just no one successful month of just uninterrupted power supply. We haven't witnessed that. And then we can talk about other little problems left, right, center in some states, but this one is national, so I think it's bigger than all of that. What have been done when it comes to the money that are supposed to keep our plants running? The same way we can prop into NNPC, for example, Sele, the money that have been sunk into our refineries and they are still redundant, where are they? Who was it given to? And why are we not having refineries running? The same way should be done for power in this country. Why are these plants abandoned? Why are they not working? Where is the money that have supposed to have been put to doing this or putting that? Because in the end, it means that we are running on equipment, facilities that are not up to date. That's why every small thing, we're talking about the grid collapse, we're talking about power outage and all of that. So I believe it's probe and recover. When that money is being recovered, then now what is the way forward? Let's do the job and let's get it there, because it doesn't matter. I keep saying it, that as long as something was being put in there consistently, we have budget every year, and there is budget for power. So you can't tell me that the Nigerian government have not put in money into the power sector. Of course not. No matter how little it is, as long as there was diligent, consistent work in that sector, we should not be facing what we are facing at the moment. That is a fact whatsoever. So let there be a probe to the billions that have been given out for power plants projects across the country. Where is it now? Where are we headed to? And then what is the way forward concerning these lost funds that we are supposed to be seeing the evidence for it?
No wonder yesterday, I think it was on the yesterday's paper, we saw where some of these workers are even afraid to go to some of these communities because, I mean, you can see that they are really going through a lot. You dare not step into certain communities. They would deal with you before they will make it alive, fine. So I hope that they will do something about that. So Rachel, it was the honor to round up by this Punch Sports Extra newspaper.
All right, on Punch Sports Extra, the big story, who is Eagles' next coach? Extras point way forward for next gaffer of 3-time African champions. And then we have Ajibade to Arsenal, go to MFM for deliverance. Catalans eye first semi-finals in 5 years. We're seeing Barca winning PSG 3-2. Dortmund versus Atletico Madrid, where we are having Atletico having a 2-1 win over Dortmund. Can Germans turn tide against Rojiblancas? That is a question. I believe this is in anticipation for the second leg of the Champions League quarterfinals, which team will be moving to the semi-finals. And then Bundesliga title, very special, coming from Tela, where we are having Bayern Leverkusen like taking the league and cup for the first time in history. And then we have PSG rule out Rashford move. Gunners need Ronaldo. You can find details on page 4. I don't know if Ronaldo is who can rescue Arsenal at the moment. And then we have Oshoala maintains 100% start for Bayern FC. And then we have I was in control, says Ajaba after title defense. Alegna breaks 38-year men's discus record. You can find details on page 2. PSG yet to take Osimhen's decision. This is coming from Romano. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on Point Sports Extra.
You know, when I was looking at Forbes this morning, I was happy to see that Osimhen, Ashola make it in the 30 out of the 30 Africans on it, and then we really have to give it to them. They're really doing well. We saw others even in the entertainment industry as well joining. So we just hope that they'll get all the support they can get from us here in the country, and then to continue to represent us well. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome, sir.
And also thank you to our followers. Thank you to our viewers for always making it a day with us on the Dailies. Until we come your way tomorrow, do have a great day ahead.